Hey everyone, I'm Plisky. I'm joined by Kyle Matsel today, and we're going to talk everything about professional sports combines. I think this is something we've been involved with for a while and enjoy doing. So thanks for joining me today, Kyle.
Yeah, no, thanks, Phil. It's great to sit down and talk about something that, I think we're both just very crazy passionate about and really have had the opportunity to do at a high level for a number of years now. So just love diving into that.
Absolutely. So let's just start with that. I mean, how long have you been doing these? What is a combine? First of all, if we're in Indiana, and so we think, tractor implements and farming type of things. If you say combine, but what's a combine, and how did you start? When did you start getting involved in them?
Great question. Yeah, again, rural Indiana, that's exactly what you think of as combines, right? But these are draft prospect combines. So you think about pro sports or really individuals at the high school or college level that are looking to get into pro sports. So they're looking to be drafted. They're a prospect. They're really kind of going in front of teams, meeting with scouts, and also displaying some of their physical attributes, doing a variety of different tests, really to try to help themselves, get drafted and picked up by a team. That's really the primary focus. And believe it or not, most of the major sports have these kind of combine events that happen. I know NBA, NFL, NHL all have these different types of combines. And believe it or not, Major League Baseball really did not have a combine really until a handful of years ago, and we were lucky enough to get involved with that. But my experience at combine really dates back probably about 10 years, really getting into more with National Hockey League, doing combine testing with them, and then obviously that turned into working directly more with Major League Baseball with their combine testing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I think I got started again back with NHL Combine. We'd done a little bit in the NFL Combine. Major League Baseball Combine's been going on for 5 years now. So, like you say, it's been great to be involved. Since the beginning of a new combine process. We I think NFL is probably the most maybe known one, the most publicized one, but all of these other leagues have it as well. Let's talk about when you started at the NHL. What kind of testing were you doing? What did that look like?
Well, when we first started the NHL, we're doing a lot of like Y balance testing, right? So using the Y balance test, the lower quarter version, really to get an idea of that dynamic balance and that triplanar motion. What's really great is the players really loved it because the posterior lateral direction actually looks a little bit like a skater stride. Face values, players may be thinking, oh, you're measuring something to do with skating, and we're not really. We're measuring ankle mobility and hip stability and core stability and of course balance. And but that is a great performance metric that is, again, we've been measuring there for a long time. In addition to that, we've done movement testing using functional movement screen, just getting a more of a global idea of how people move there. What about at the Major League Baseball combine? I know that fortunately we both have been able to be kind of on the front lines of helping develop those testing batteries. But I guess how are those tests maybe different at the Major League Combine, Major League Baseball Combine versus the NHL Combine?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an important concept is like there's a lot of different tests that occur that some of them we're responsible for, some of them we're not. And, if we look at, there's multiple days, there's skill days and, on field days. And I think that's an important concept too, is this is just a piece of the puzzle, but from a strength and conditioning perspective in that section on those 2 days that are measured in what we do, they do everything from, posture images to anthropometrics, height, weight, skin folds, limb lengths, bone segment lengths, all that kind of stuff goes into there. We do a top tier SFMA that's videoed, and then, range of motion, basically of every meaningful joint range of motion in baseball. And so what is a meaningful joint range of motion? Well, obviously you think of shoulder and things like that, but neck, T-spine, hips, ankle, all of those are very important range of motion measures we know are related to baseball performance. And then we go on to functional movement screen, lower quarter Y balance test, as well as grip strength. And then we have the performance tests of, counter movement jump, a broad jump, and a 30-yard sprint. So a whole bunch of different tests, and it kind of gives you that picture of the athlete there. And I do think there's a lot of tests, obviously, just in that section. What I see probably as one of the biggest problems is looking at one test and looking at, for example, sprint or Y balance test or counter movement jump, and just focusing on one test. But, I kind of set you up on this one here, but does one test really ever tell us what we're looking for? How do we look at these tests? What do we look at to be able to kind of make sense of what we're doing?
That's a great question. And, again, as you're talking, you're rattling out all these different tests and parameters and measures, and it almost sounds overwhelming just as you're going through it. It's really kind of necessary, right? Because you're exactly right. One test isn't going to give you the whole picture. It's kind of like the analogy of, if I take an empty glass and I go and I dip it into the ocean and I look in it and say, oh, well, I don't see any sea life. I don't see anything in there. Therefore, the ocean must be completely empty, right? It's such a small component of the overall profile of an athlete when you do just one or two tests. So it really has to be that battery. It has to be all those different domains, from high level performance and power all the way down to joint range of motion and posture, right? And all those things matter.
So, and I think of it too, people always are kind of talking about, well, what do these tests have to do with drafting somebody, or what are these tests? And I don't think, again, I go back to the one test analogy. I don't know that I would ever, select somebody or not select somebody based on any one of the tests that are done or any one of the things are done. It'd be kind of like saying, hey, a guy took infield and he missed, 2 of 5 ground balls, or he took batting practice and 2 of the 10 he hit were ground outs. It'd be like, well, that's who he is as a player. Right? That's ridiculous, right? We wouldn't think that. And I think this is an opportunity for the player to showcase who they are, what they are, and for teams, to see who they are, what they are. And these are all, I think, a puzzle analogy is a great way to look at it, right? If we have a 500-piece puzzle, each piece gives us more clarity, more depth of picture, and one piece is almost, I don't want to say useless, but really doesn't provide a lot of information, and this is just to really help provide this bigger picture type of thing. So as we look at that, it's interesting because I think these tests provide potential areas for development. This is where a person is well developed. This is where a person has more opportunity to develop, and it's really designed to be a very positive experience. So this is kind of what happens at the pro level. We do all these tests. We all know that maybe resources are better at the pro level. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. I think that's a little bit of a misnomer that we could probably clear up here. But, we have a huge testing team. We have lots of great things going on. We have experts there with, literally decades of experience in professional sports. But how can we, and this is cool. It's awesome. They're great Instagram photos and
Tell me more about that, though. Tell me more about, how does the testing team selected, and how are the tests selected? Like, we have all these tests and we know we need to measure these domains. How do we know what tests that we need to be performed and who's in the right position to actually administer those tests?
Absolutely. Well, I think that's probably the number one thing that is important is test selection. I think the number one thing I see done wrong in test selection is people forget about your basic statistical properties of reliability. Meaning, if a test isn't done reliably or isn't a reliable test, then it's really not useful to be out there. So number one, reliability. And number two is therefore kind of piggybacks off of number one is if it's going to be a reliable test, it needs a reliable examiner. And so the people who do these tests are crazy well trained. And so I look at it, for example, we do ISAC measurements, which are the anthropometric measurements. And those people are certified. They go through a certification process. It's an international certification process. And so it's really, really, we have tight, good measures that we can trust. Well, very similarly, whether we're measuring range of motion, strength, or movement, the tests we've selected have proven reliability in the research, as well as that those testers have undergone extensive training, have in very sports specific ways done the test, and have not only done the training, but have been tested on their reliability as well. Like that we know that we do it. And we also do a crazy amount of, it seems silly so that someone may have been doing a test for 20 years, but we practice those tests again. And even when we're on site, we practice them before, we practice it after. So there's a lot that meets the eyes. One of the things that we always talk about that on test selection, I always try to relate it back to I have kids in sports, and the two things I always say is when we're selecting tests or debating tests, it's what would I want my child to be tested on, and how would I want them to be treated? And so that's one of the things that I love about what we do is we know we're dealing with real people with real careers, real futures ahead of them. So yeah, so it is a pretty detailed process and pretty rigorous to be a tester, and to be a tester and to be a test is kind of like like becoming a Disney Imagineer or type of thing. There's a lot behind the scenes that maybe people don't see.
It's true. It's so true. I mean, truly some of the best, most elite testers in the world that work hard at it and prepare and come ready to go, every year to do this. It is because it's a big undertaking to pull off this, resources all around the room. But I like what you just said there about, hey, we want to just do this because it's the right thing to do. It doesn't really matter if you're a professional player or a college player or a high school player. The tests are kind of the same regardless of whatever level you're at. So, when we do this type of testing for the local university here, here in Evansville, we both are, faculty at the University of Evansville in our DPT and PhD programs. So when we do pre-participation physicals, guess what? These athletes get the same thing. They get a Y balance test, and they get FMS, and they get range of motion, and they get dorsiflexion and power. And it's the same thing. And they're no different. Just because they're at a small Division I school doesn't make them less important than, necessarily these professional athletes. It's all the same, right?
Absolutely. Well, and I think that's a key note. And what's interesting about the right testing battery is it really shouldn't matter if you're a high school athlete, collegiate athlete, or beyond. So with that said, how do we, again, it's neat to have people see and pat ourselves on the back that, oh, weren't we doing a great job at the pro level? But it did all start at the high school level, and this type of testing and doing this, and all the way being able to test 400 people in a morning is a pretty cool experience. But how does someone who is saying, I want to test my girls soccer team, or I want to test one individual, I want to start getting into more of the movement and performance aspect of it, or I have a college that I want to get this going at. What does that look like? How do we do that? How can we give them some practical strategies, that says, okay, well, maybe I'm not bringing a team of 25 testers to be able to do this. How do I do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think more nowadays, I hear lots of different folks, whether you're a physical therapist or a strength coach, athlete trainer. I get that question so much of, I want to do this for my community. I want to do this for my kids' soccer team, or I want to do this for my university, whatever the case. But, how can I pull this off and make it meaningful? And I think, like most things, we didn't just wake up and roll out of bed in one day and had a testing team of 20 top experts and are now measuring all these different performance domains at the Major League Baseball combine. Like, there's obviously a process that we go through, and sometimes you don't always see that. So my biggest recommendation for people that are just starting out doing this is, hey, just start small. Just start with one team, or maybe even just half of a team. Take your upperclassmen first, and let's get them
Or
tested.
maybe your lower classmen.
Make an argument for that too. I mean, yeah, for sure. But take half the team and let's get them tested first. And then usually what happens is teammates, and especially like parents, start talking and like, I want that same type of intervention and recommendation. So usually it's pretty easy to get buy-in from a team or a coach pretty quickly. But start small, and maybe it's not 20 tests. Maybe it's just one or two tests. If you can capture, a functional movement screen and ankle dorsiflexion, my God,
Hmm.
a lot of things that you can intervene with and work on to improve that player's performance just with that information that you can really get in about 10 minutes.
Right. Yeah. So I do think starting small is an absolute key, non-negotiable. You start. Be good with one person first, right? So don't go out and do your group test as the first time you've ever done this. Make sure that you can do it with one person and how long it takes, and get other staff involved. Students are a great place. So we have students at the combine, which is really cool, right? And they're scribing, meaning they're writing down the numbers, but it helps us be way more efficient, way more accurate, and a great experience for them. So get students involved, get your front desk staff involved, get your athletic department secretary, whatever it is. Just get those people involved and just start and just know. We also have a mantra at the combines that we do is this year is better than last year. We're going to do something better every year and get better, and we do, and it's true. And we've done that with physicals for 20 plus years now, and every year better. And it's amazing. That's when you get to the point that suddenly you look back and you go, wow, how did we, it was really bad at first. It was really slow at first. And now we can test 400 people in a morning. So, but don't expect to start there. Don't look at that way.
Yeah, yeah. It's everyone likes to see kind of the outcome, and they don't ever see the journey a little bit, right? And the journey is still very meaningful. And again, I can remember doing high school physicals and even university physicals where we had lines out the door down the road, because we just weren't efficient. But I mean, those little things get better with practice and time, and then you're able to add more tests and add more. We're to a point now with our, physical testing where on the fly we can hand people a report of how they performed on the tests that actually gives them some idea of just where they are as a durable performer. Like, here's how you stack up compared to your age, your gender, your sport, right? And you also get some starting exercises like, well, here, based off the results, here's kind of the high dollar moves to start
Right.
with, and it's really powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, very good. This has been a great discussion. I've sure enjoyed it. Can you give some advice or encouragement to as we kind of part here and kind of end this? What's that advice or encouragement you can give to our people listening here?
Yeah, I think that, when I look into the research and I look into just my passion, which is musculoskeletal and sports health, I think that overwhelmingly we have a musculoskeletal health problem where more and more people are having pain, disabilities, sports injuries, economic burdens, whatever the case is. But you can trace a lot of that back to their musculoskeletal health, not necessarily heart health, cancer, other things that you think of right away, but to just the fact that they're not moving well and that their muscles and their joints are not doing what they need to do and leading to wear and tear. So I think if we can do our part as a profession and as a community to do better proactively at identifying people that we can develop and that we can improve, and I think we can take a big dent in the overall burden that that musculoskeletal health problem imparts, but also make people like live better and feel better, for their lifetime, which is
Right.
really powerful too.
That's so awesome. And yeah, that's great advice. And bottom line is let's get started. Let's get going. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to answer them. But in the meantime, yeah, just go change some lives.